Hi, good morning. This is Tailin Agoyo, and this is Rise and Thrive on Usala Media. Today, I have an extra special guest, Nicolle Gonzales, who is the founder and medical director of Changing Woman Initiative, a nonprofit organization with the mission to renew cultural birth knowledge, to empower and reclaim Indigenous sovereignty of women's medicine, and lifeway teachings to promote reproductive wellness, healing through holistic approaches, and to strengthen women's bonds to family and community. Changing Woman Initiative provides culturally integrated healthcare for Native American women and families. Nicolle received her bachelor's of nursing and her master's of nurse midwifery at the University of New Mexico. She is a member of the American College of Nurse Midwives and is certified with the American Midwifery Certification Board. She has over 12 years experience as a nurse and has worked as a nurse midwife doing full scope midwifery for the last 10 years. Nicolle has worked on several community projects around birth equity, and she has served as the founding board president and vice board president of 2 birth centers in New Mexico. In addition to attending births, Nicolle is a contributing writer for the Indigenous Goddess Gang online magazine, where she discusses Indigenous birth, midwifery, ceremony, reproductive justice, and Indigenous feminism. Nicolle, hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you are, and I'm so happy to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here talking to you as well.
It's been such a long time since I've actually seen you in person, and I don't think we've actually had a live conversation since then. So this is great, and I've been really looking forward to it. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself to our guests and explain where you are, because a lot of our guests are from this area, Philadelphia area. So where you are, where your homelands are, and a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I'm Nicolle Gonzales. I'm Navajo, or in our name, Dene, and my clans are Glashchi Inishlan, Dotochi Nipashchi, Nishkaitsway Dishache, Nanis Dijadishanale. So I come from the four corners of New Mexico, which is the the corner part of the Navajo Nation, and that's where I come from. I currently live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is the capital of New Mexico. And what else do you want to know? I'm a Pisces. I'm single.
Yeah.
See, 3 children.
See, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Oh, there's so much to talk about. So as I was preparing for this, I was thinking we could go down so many roads with our conversation, but I'm going to bring it back to the organization right now. So
right. You didn't expect me to say that after that long list of wonderful accomplishments.
Not yet. You have all of your things are accomplishments. So, but I expected that to come maybe later. Oh, yeah. And now I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say, first of all, Pisces, we always vibe on being Pisces. Like, I get you when you're so you're on social media and you share a lot and you're very vulnerable and open about your life, and I always really admire that. But I get you, when you write the things you write, it's maybe stuff that a lot of Pisces can vibe with for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm really open about those things because clearly I do. I'm very thankful for the very public attention my work has gotten over the years. And as a woman, especially as a Native woman, it's important to tell the story of our success, but also our failures and our challenges, because nothing is given to us. We have to really work for everything. And it absolutely puts us in a very complex tension type relationship with our communities and with our families. And there's also this assumption that things are just handed to us, yes. And that doesn't happen that way. Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens. There's a lot of hustle, I would call it, and doing multiple jobs. And so me speaking truth to like what I've experienced in all kinds of ways, publicly and social media, it's also healing for me, and also ability for me to like get support from my community, that I'm not alone doing this work. and you understand it. I mean, I see you also kind of sharing your journey with the work that you're doing, and all the ways that it's reaching different communities, and there's all these internal and external conflicts
Mhm.
all the time.
Mhm.
And so how do we navigate that with integrity as an Indigenous woman? I think that's something I often think about, and that's why I talk about it.
Yeah, I love that you talk about it. I'm so grateful for that. I think um, I want to back up to the beginnings of Changing Women Initiative, and why did you think it was necessary to create this organization? And it's just grown so much. So, but let's start there.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of a myriad of things that were happening in the community that I was living in at the time. And working in a hospital where I felt women, well, I didn't just feel, but I saw Native women not being treated fairly or equally as to other women I've taken care of in private sector hospitals. And I witnessed trauma and care that wasn't consented often. And also, like, there wasn't anybody physician wise, midwifery wise in our communities really focused on supporting birthing Native women in hospitals, or even doing the work to understand how we got to this place where, as Native women becoming mothers, like understanding that journey historically that separated us from our mothering knowledge, and also our understanding on our cultural teachings around our bodies as women. And I saw this all kind of come together when I worked at IHS in Santa Fe. And it really bothered me on a very personal level because I have 3 children and I know what I experienced becoming a mother and watching these women birth in a place where they weren't fully supported. And it was a very medical process that they were experiencing. And so I saw that there was potential for a different way to do things. And that's really what inspired me to go back to school to become a nurse midwife. And then there's a whole other thing, like it's like this whole history, like developed in front of my eyes when I was in school, and more information came forward. And I saw the huge disparities and the gaps in the care that Native women were experiencing today because of decisions like policy wise were made around our healthcare like 20, 30 years ago. And so there was this process of like, how do we fix that? How do we come together and change things? But more importantly, give Native Indigenous women a voice to tell their story about their birthing experiencing, their mother's experiences, their journey to become the women that they are today. And these issues definitely intersect a lot with missing murdered Indigenous women issues, reproductive right issues, birthing right issues, just Indigenous women rights issues across the board. Um, and obviously I'm very inspired about the works. I could talk on and on and about it, but this is where, you know, that's what inspired me to create this organization and maybe create this birthing center to create a space for healing and connection, and a place that women could go to and feel supported and heard and listened to. And that's when you and I met, right? We went to Canada and you were
Mhm.
able to film that process of us visiting 2 very different birth centers. And so much has happened since that time. I mean, I was able to go to Guatemala and down in Guatemala to visit some Indigenous midwives and see their birth center. And so it's really been a fulfilling, exciting journey to see our Native Indigenous communities really coming together to support their communities based on their cultural knowledge and their skill sets in very unique, different ways. And to see women doing this work, you know, and I think women, we're really good at creating workarounds because there's lots of barriers, not just gender barriers, but political barriers, social, systematic barriers that make it difficult for us just to do the things we need to help our communities. Um, and that's where this idea of creating Changing Woman initiative came from, is like all of these complex issues just um, you know, it manifested into an idea and now it's manifesting into a reality. And I love that process of creation, of like bringing something to life and make it tangibly real, you know. And that's, I think that's the best part of it.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's really it. It seemed like when you started the organization, you you were at the forefront of this work or bringing people together in the United States, and you were really doing research and going to other places, like you're saying, like we went to Canada and Guatemala, and um, people were reaching out to you, and you had received so much publicity and press kind of right away because this was something that wasn't really being talked about outside of our circles, or that's my impression, right? And
Right.
it seemed like you were going full force right away. You were just thrown into this, or not thrown in, but you were putting yourself into this place. And it it took, from my view, it just seemed like it took a lot of, like, you have so much courage and so much strength because you started something from virtually nothing, and it's now you are someone that people turn to ask questions and to learn about these things. And just watching your journey has been really incredible. But how do you, honestly, you're like the hardest working woman I know, and as a mother,
I'm like, you are totally.
I see you, and I feel it's just wonderful to see. And it's so, the work you're doing is so necessary. And I wish we had been in contact when I was having my babies,
Yeah.
because there was so much missing. So now let's like fast forward to now where you have a space, you've just hired an executive director. I mean, things are just shifting. So, I mean, they've always shifted quickly, but now you're just expanding so much.
It's very interesting to go from this very grassroots place, and thinking locally, and then engaging with other partners and ideas from other communities. And then just that journey of creation for a nonprofit is very interesting and challenging. I'm like I don't even know how to speak to that process. And I absolutely believe that it's super important to vet really good people to work with. And I can honestly tell you that just getting to this point, I haven't worked with good people, and I haven't. It's been super challenging, to find the right people who are not only motivated but have the time and commitment to actually do the work beside you, versus putting that all on yourself to do. And I think that's a challenge with being a founder of a nonprofit, is
Mhm.
people want to work with you, but they also are trying to be thoughtful of this baby that you're bringing up. But also you want people invested in the idea and the project. So you have to be thoughtful about sharing the work, but communicating, having compassion for that relationship so that you work well together to like bring the string forward. And so it's yes, we've gotten to this point where now we have an executive director that we just hired, and there was definitely lots of discussion around whether how I felt about that, because the people in my organization know that I've built this to where we're at.
Mhm.
But what people also don't know is, I might have ideas, and I'm the public face of this organization right now, but we wouldn't be where we're at without an amazing board of directors, without my sister, my office manager, without my birth assistant, I mean my midwife partner, Krista, as well as this executive director who was initially our president of our board, who comes with all this beautiful experience with board development. And she was the president of a midwife and a national midwifery organization. She does a lot of social justice work, and works with communities and women from Mexico who don't have health insurance. And she's created a free clinic, in Phoenix. So she comes with all this knowledge, and she's also a mentor and somebody that I look up to and have helped me on my journey this far. So it only makes sense to me that this is somebody that not only that I want to help lead our organization to the future, but like who we can work very well together. And we've already developed a really good relationship before she even stepped into this role. And so it gets you thinking about, making sure you work with really good people, and when you start to get those people and you're working well together, you actually create something really beautiful, and then you start to see the changes you want to see.
Yes.
So this is like the fifth year that I've it's been 5 years in the making to get here, and it absolutely takes that long.
Yes.
And we're still at the cusp of
Right.
lots of change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it just takes time, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yes. And what is her name? So
Um,
that we,
oh, Marina Farrell. She's
Marina Farrow.
a certified. She's a CPM.
That was
Certified.
very exciting news.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It does. It takes a long time, and there's no real rush. You know, the work you're doing the work, and it takes the time it needs to take. To rush it would just be messy. But to say the least. But how does it feel to wow, you said so many things. So I'm thinking about working, you have to have a good team around you. And it almost feels like no one cares about the organization as much as you do, right? And so, you know, at the end of 2 or 3 in the morning when something's due and everybody else has their other responsibilities because it's like a job for them, or they're volunteering, or they're, you know, you're the one left with having to make sure it gets done. So
Right.
as
But that's the thing about is if you have a good team, you're
yeah,
not.
right. Right. And so you start to be able to develop that over time. And so now do you feel like things are shifting for you where that's lifting the actual, like, put your head down working, and now you be creative and think about the bigger things that, you know, dream up the bigger things that you have in mind for the organization?
Actually, no.
No.
I feel like when you carry and push an organization forward the way I have, and then people have come and gone, and there's challenges you faced. There's a lot of things you put on hold, like your personal life, your health, your family, your relationships, all are stressed in that process where you're
Mhm.
so focused on creating. And now that I have all this extra help and I have people really invested and everybody's doing their part to make it what it is now, I don't have to carry all of those things anymore. And now I get to actually step back a little bit and
Yeah.
focus on my well-being, you know,
Right.
my health, my relationships that maybe have been broken or separated or challenged because of how focused I was on the organization. Um, and really think about how do I what is my personal ecosystem as a cultivator, like an influencer, as somebody who is really into this process of creating, because I feel like we get into this very unhealthy balance with our work and our passion that it eats everything up outside of that. And so it's not sustainable, right?
Mm-mm.
I could not continue the momentum of how I was working up to this point.
Mhm.
And so now I'm reevaluating, like, how do I want to work? You know, how is this feeding me in a good way so that I can be sustainable for the long term? And how are we creating an organization that isn't just taking and feeding everybody's energy, but like giving back to them as well? And honestly, that's where I'm at. And maybe that is the evolution and the process and the change that you were asking about. It's not so much about growing the organization and like being this huge conglomerate
Yeah.
thing. It's like, okay, we have this beautiful vision and this goal and this intention to help our community with this birth center, but we also know that it can be unhealthy for us. The nonprofit model isn't the most
Mhm.
healthiest business model out there in general, so we have to think through those processes. um, Making sure my staff is paid well is important to me. Making sure skill sets that we are creating programming to train women actually is going to the communities who need it the most, and that it's supporting those economies there as well. So clearly I'm not just thinking about birth, I'm thinking
Right.
about the role and the life that women have in community to make these huge changes to make them thrive again. And
Right.
it's money, it's skills, it's knowledge,
Mhm.
you know, it's bringing those stories forward and supporting them. And for me, that's the ultimate goal. That for
Mhm.
me is success.
That's amazing. You're doing incredible work, and I want to talk more about it when we come back. We're going to take about a 2-minute break, and we'll be back on Rise and Thrive on Usula Media.
Yeah.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps!
Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Live on Usla Media, and I'm here with Nicolle Gonzales, who is a friend. But so we were just chatting it up during the commercial break, but we're back. I want to talk about your birth center. Where is it? Like, I want to know all the details. Where is it located? How, I saw when you moved in, and I just want to know how it's developed.
So 2 years ago, we did lease some property here in Santa Fe just to open a clinic space. It's not a birth center.
Okay, you call it. What is it called?
It's just Changing Home Initiative Clinic.
Okay.
I know we've had to give stuff names just because they have to.
Right. Yeah.
It is mostly like a clinic that so people can know where to come and see us. We are a staff of now 4. So I have a office manager, another partner midwife, and then of course our ED, and then our I believe 8 board members right now. And so we actually signed the lease for our clinic space for another year, but we are awaiting a large donation to purchase some land. And the land we are looking at is here in Santa Fe. It's close to the hospital, or one of them.
Amazing.
And we're beginning that process of,
Wow.
I had shared the design of the building, but now the plan initially was to build in Puaki land, but that didn't fall through for whatever reason. And so we were looking more at private commercial land on private land. And so now we're beginning the process of purchasing the property and building the center. And so that's, I think we're in a really good place to start that now.
That's incredible, Nicolle. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal.
Next year, that will be where we're at. And yeah, it's a huge shift. We're also looking at maybe hiring another nurse midwife next year. We're primarily doing home births. So we're in Santa Fe, but we go to births in Taos. And
this is what I want to talk to you about. I want to hear all about this.
And so we go to births that are 3.5 hours away. And we are seeing women from all communities, the urban Native community populations. We see a lot of those women. And we see women from North Dakota and Oklahoma and California and Alaska. So we see Native families from all over. And most of the families that we see, many of them don't have health insurance, or health insurance doesn't pay for everything. So we have grant funds that pay for the care. We're seeing lots of women right now who can't get in to see their well woman provider because of COVID complications or challenges. And so we're seeing lots of women coming from a long distance, 3 hours, 4 hours, to see us just to do a pap smear, or to do a well woman visit, or refill on their birth control. And so I feel like we're really feeling a need right now. We've been really, really busy with births. We've had quite a few births in the last 2 or 3 months. We have a couple more before the end of November, so when you're attending home births, once they become 37 weeks, for us, we go on call for their delivery. So we can't travel, we can't drink alcohol, we can't go very far. And so my partner and I have been on call for births since June. So we'll get off call in November once this last baby births, and then we can like relax and take a break. So it's really going to be helpful to have that third midwife so we don't turn people away and that we actually get real off-call break time. And when I say on call, like my phone is with me in my bed, like I have to make sure it's on. I always have to make sure it's on and within range. And that's a bit challenging sometimes. But our clients get groceries with their prenatal care every week up to postpartum. They get a doula. So we work with Tailin United and any other doula in the community that they choose. We pay for that doula. They also get traditional medicine and acupuncture with Monica Lucero with Red Root Acupuncture. She comes on Wednesdays. And the couple gets treatment. So the mom, the baby, and then the partner. And then
phenomenal.
If they have family, they get treatment too, and it's free. And then any plant medicines, herbs, we make a lot of tea and tinctures to support their wellness through pregnancy, and those things are free. And so those are the primary services they get from us. If they need to see a medicine person, which a lot of communities, that's part of their wellness, we do pay for that as well.
Wow, it's so beautiful. I could cry. Just how much you're doing and how thoughtful you are about the needs of community, and that you reach out, and even something as like groceries, that's just to alleviate a stress that a family may have, and especially during this quarantine COVID time. I see you've been traveling a lot, and how do you manage that for yourself? How do you, one, keep yourself safe, and also just mentally and emotionally make sure that you are protected?
Well, I mean, I'm Danae, so I do have medicine people who take care of me, and so I do go get that work done on myself once a year at least. We have a sweat lodge at one of the home that I was living at before I moved to Santa Fe. So my midwife partner and I and my family will do a sweat lodge to kind of purify and pray and just release whatever tension we have. There's also things that I do before I go to a birth and after. A lot of it's to do with like water, cedar baths, of course, prayer, sage. There's things that I do that really clean off that energy of either a hard birth or when I talk with a woman who's had a very challenging, not just birth experience, but like life, right? Because we're doing lots of things. I'm a huge, I love to run. Running keeps me sane and happy. So I run like 3-6 miles every other day when I have time and I'm not exhausted. But I feel like that's a really good release. I love that, like just get out there and get it done. I love dancing. I listen and I dance a lot in my car.
Yes.
Book. Music is like my go-to place to chill out and relax. Sleep, getting enough sleep is huge. As a midwife, when we're busy, we sometimes don't rest. And so I'm trying to be kinder to myself with being more rested. So I want to say like adrenal fatigue is a huge thing, as somebody and you might experience that too, but somebody who's constantly dealing with stress and tension and taking care of other people, your adrenals get burnt out and you can be really exhausted. Your body exhibits symptoms that you're not in balance anymore. And so I really pay attention to making sure that I'm not fatigued and that I'm recuperating after a stressful experience or, something happens. I'm not saying I'm always perfect about it, but there's a lot of upkeep that I realize I have to do just to take care of people. So I'm not burning myself out.
That's really good. I want to just shift over because you've reminded me of like all your traveling. You actually went to Standing Rock. Can we just spend like 5 minutes on that? Because you did some incredible work there, bringing a lot of midwives there and offering healthcare. So I'd love if you could talk about that before our next break.
Yeah, I think like everyone else watching the activities, the things that happened in Standing Rock, just show up on social media and feeling that connection to that, not only to our history, but to like what was happening there. And this was at the very early phases of Change Women Initiative. I think this was like our second or third year since we'd become integrated, or this vision came to fruition. And because it was just me and my very small board, I made the decision to raise funds and resources to get medical supplies, but to also create a field clinic in the camp, because what I had heard was like half of those people in camp were women and children. And so I thought, where are those women getting care? Because if everyone's coming from other communities, they probably can't even get care at IHS. And so this idea was like, maybe I should go. Should I do it? I was also working a very busy midwifery clinic on call every day. So I had to really think about whether I had the capacity to bring what I wanted to happen there, which was this field clinic. And I did ask a few midwives on social media if they would come help me. I didn't know these individuals personally. They just were like, we want to go, let's help. So there's actually 4 of us who drove out there, 2 vans with supplies. My mom makes teepees, so she made a huge teepee that the intention was to create the field clinic in this teepee because it's pretty easy to put up and then to move. But I was talking to another woman there who needed the teepee that she wanted to use for like talking circle for women in healing. So I made the decision to give her the teepee, thinking that we would have something else to create. And honestly, I was only in camp for a week to try and scope out like what the resources around the camp was. So like how far was the closest ER, where were people going to get care, were there any midwives in that state, where were women birthing in that community. And it was really astounding to see that it's like an hour drive just to get to the hospital to have a baby. Women were not getting care how they chose or wanted to in that camp. A lot of women had like UTIs, maybe needed pregnancy tests. So all this normal well woman stuff women were experiencing in camp. So it wasn't just like birth things, it was just a place to support women. It later we were able to get a yurt set up, but there were some interesting things in camp where the resources were people. If you think about putting all these things together, you need people to do it. So every day that resource of people would shift because they would go out to do to protect the water, and then they would come back in the evening, or if some people got picked up by the police, they wouldn't come back. And then there was constant threats every day that the camp was going to get raided. Do we need to move this camp? And so there was just constant tension every day just to hold that space. And there was 2 other midwives there who were able to acquire this yurt and set up the space, because I did have to leave after a week. And after that week, what I primarily did was coordinate volunteers, donations, and basically trying to set up how we were going to get and vet specific Indigenous midwives to come and donate their time. And that was really challenging work for me because I wasn't in camp the whole time. There was other people holding that space down, but I was on the other end making sure that the money continued to come in and that the community of people who wanted to volunteer were the appropriate people, because you can absolutely have not the right people again coming in harm. And so that was its own process. I learned a lot from that experience. I really wonder if I would ever do it again. It took a very heavy toll on me emotionally and spiritually. And because it taught me also a lot about working with groups and what works and what doesn't work, because there was definitely a power struggle happening between me and the other midwives. And I was trying to be more communicative about how we should take care of people, how the funding was going to get spent. And then you bring in the challenges of being a nonprofit. I wasn't just somebody volunteering and this was my money, and this was the nonprofit money. So there's a whole bunch of other people I have to work with to decide how that money is going to get used. It wasn't up to me, and it was up to this group. And so that was different and challenging for me. I feel proud now that I was able to do that work. During that time, it's taken me several years to heal, actually, from that experience, because it definitely played on my emotions as a Pisces, as somebody who's very loving and giving. The perception that it was for personal gain or for fame, like, hurt me. And it was something that I felt very invested in. It was my heart work. And so to see it transform and change into something that it wasn't, or to be perceived in a way that it wasn't, really, really hurt me, and it bothered me.
Well, where was that coming from? Was it online mostly, these criticisms? I mean, it seems like
No, it was
people are
actually,
so quick to.
it was coming from the working group that I had put together to be that space.
Oh, interesting.
The two midwives who were there were kind of feeding me stuff about what they thought, and maybe their relationship with the camp was telling them. I don't know if it was real or not. And I find that this happens a lot with women who work together. If one is doing the work, or maybe shining more, or maybe out there more, there's this really interesting thing that happens where they want to make you cut you down to size, and so they'll feed you stuff.
Yes, yeah,
Isn't entirely
that's
true.
true. Right. That's not entirely true. And then you're wondering, but you never get to the bottom of it, and you never know, but it throws you off balance. And
it was interesting because I know Democracy Now! Was there, and they interviewed two of the midwives in camp, and they never mentioned me. They never mentioned Changing Room Initiative. They were very happy. I actually told one of the women speaking, because she called me right before, like, Democracy Now! She's going to talk to me about Indigenous birth. So I fed her everything she said.
And she said it and didn't mention you or the organization.
Nope. And even the funding, after I chose to step away from that group, they still were like, well, where's the money? We want the money.
Oh.
So I have lots of experience dealing with groups that that are not good working groups.
Right. It becomes toxic, and they're not healthy.
Very toxic. And I don't know what it is about spaces like that bring those situations forward. There isn't a real sense of decision-making process, ownership and accountability, as well as communication. You assume, you come together, but there isn't any discussion of how you're going to make decisions. And when that happens, things don't flow like they're supposed to. There's power struggles, there's lack of communication, there's assumptions, and there's no compassion for what each person is doing and carrying.
Yeah.
And so that's what it taught me, that I never want to work in a group like that again. I actually want to cultivate a more sustainable and supportive group environment than I've worked in the last 5 years in different spaces.
And that's what you're doing, and you're seeing it all happen right now. So that's the beauty in that.
This is the first time I've really talked about Standing Rock and about these things. I've kept a lot of things to myself. But it feels good to talk about them and, like, not hide. And I think sometimes it's hard to tell that side of any story, because you always get backlash as the person telling that story, especially being an Indigenous woman. Your character gets questioned. And for me, it's like, I have the opportunity to always tell my truth. And if we're on the negative side of that story, that's on you.
Right. It's your truth. It's your story. It's just like, if you didn't want me to say these, if you didn't want to be reflected in a bad light, then you shouldn't have done the bad things.
Exactly.
Right. And I totally agree. And I think, and I'm glad to hear that you've healed from it. I didn't know it was to that extreme what was going on there. I just saw and was lauding the positive, beautiful things that you brought to Standing Rock. But I'm glad to know that you're healing. And I know it takes a long time to heal from those things, but I also know that once you're able to talk about them, then you're there, and that's really good. And it's your truth. You're right. No one can take that from you. And so,
but I think, that's why I'm like, there's all these beautiful things you see me post, and positive affirmations, good things. And I do definitely see the side of that. But there's a whole other side that I don't always talk about, but I have to choose when is the right time to talk about them.
Right.
And, when I do, people are like, what?
Right. I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I just try to keep it positive, and then maybe in a few years you can talk about what really happened. But you don't want to mess up the good stuff with all this other negative stuff that other people are bringing to the work. Just want to focus on the work. Okay, we have to take a break, and then we'll be back with Nicolle Gonzales of Changing Woman Initiative.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
And we're back on Rise and Thrive. I'm here with Nicolle Gonzales, who is the founder and medical director of Changing Woman Initiative. Is that right?
That's right.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I want to talk about I know you mentioned Santa Fe and you have land and you're building, but in 10 years, where do you see Changing Woman Initiative?
Ooh, we've discussed that a little bit. Of course, this birth center, beautiful birth center that's going to be built here in Santa Fe is really like the hub. But we've talked about building field clinics in other communities like Taos and especially Gallup, maybe another birth center there. I would love to see more Indigenous midwives serving communities, their own communities, but also have this group of Indigenous midwives working with me who don't only just attend births in the clinic or in the birth center, but who can go to those homes and do births there. Just because I spend, like some days I'll spend 7 hours on the road, seeing people, like 2 people or 3 people in a long distance location. So if some of those locations have field clinics or birth center or midwives who can travel or be there locally, I see that happening. So I see us expanding and having us in other locations. I also get a lot of requests from people for me to consult with them about creating a birth center, and I'm starting to do that more. And so I think that's a good thing because
so exciting.
Now finally getting on board with maternal health mortality and infant mortality, and so they're looking into what the causes of those things are, and I'm educating them about how midwifery is a pathway to healing and fixing that issue. So there's that's happening. I actually am starting to write my own book.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's it's a labor of love. It's in the works, but I don't know.
Amazing.
So that's happening. I think like any founder, I am thinking about my exit from my organization. I think anybody who's created something has to think about their exit. The purpose, intention for creating it is for community, it's for others. And I might have been the vision, I might have the one who's carried it this far, but I'm not going to carry it forever. And it should never be built around me and what I can do, what I'm capable of. So for me, being able to create it to a point where I can hand it off and it continues to thrive is really my goal. And beyond that, it's like, what does Nicolle want to do for herself? Because I feel like the last 10 or 15 years, I've been creating and building something for the community and for other people. And it's absolutely fed me and changed me as a person. But like, what is beyond that, And there's policy work that I would love to do, especially with the around Indigenous women rights, not just in our country, but in other countries. There's some policy legislative work here in our state that I would like to see push forward to support Indigenous midwifery and the rights of birth for women in our state and other states. So I definitely see myself still participating in birth and midwifery. It's just in a different way and a perspective. My writing is definitely a pathway to getting the message out and telling the story. So I'm wanting to hone that skill a little bit more. So I think that's like, there's just all these possibilities. And I think it's exciting traveling and going to other countries. What's really opened my eyes to rights of Indigenous women, not just in our own country, but in other countries, is women in those countries don't have the rights that we have. We actually have more rights here than they do. Reproductive rights, who their husband is rights. And so I really want to bring those stories here as well, so that it's interesting, the complex issues that women deal with here in our country have a lot to do with racism and privilege, whereas in other places it is about resources and cultural differences. It's just a different animal here. And it's really hard to see like resources and policies being drafted that don't support not only Native communities, but Native Indigenous women business, economies, and our families and how we work. And so how do we support those things on all the levels, right? And so that's kind of where I see my work going. And that's why our organization is not just focused on birth center stuff. We have a community outreach piece where we want to train women from communities to be doulas and birth assistants and lactation consultants, as well as trying to train and support an Indigenous midwife so she can go to her community to provide service and care. And then there's another arm of policy work. Like you talked about, when I first started doing this work, there wasn't a lot of discussion about birth and birth rights for Indigenous Native women. And so when I go talk to legislative people, when I go talk to anyone in particular about birth and reproductive rights, I'm educating them about our issues. And so we really need a policy arm so that that our voice is heard when policy and bills are being passed. And right now we're not really present in those places, and we need to be part of the discussion.
Right. Gosh, Nicolle, you do such important work. How can people support you? People who are listening, what's the way for them to help out?
Now we have $7 million to raise for our building. You can go to our website and donate. There's a CauseVox donation you can make there, which I actually need to update it because it was about us buying supplies for our clinic space, but now it's more of putting money towards our building. And it's $7 million is a lot of money. That doesn't include the land acquisition piece, which is another $1.5 million. And then I think about the staff and the salary and to do the work, because a lot of grants don't pay for that part. You have to put them together.
Right.
But donating for our building is right, kind of like perfect timing for us, and we're ready for that money to go towards our building. So you can go to our website, changewoman.com, and the picture of our building is on there. I believe there's a donation button on that page. People also send us checks in the mail, and they're very thankful for what we do with a nice card. Those get added to the donation.
Okay,
and,
great.
We are 501c3 nonprofit, so it is tax deductible.
Excellent. Okay, so make that donation, go to Changing Women Initiative, and support this incredible work that's so absolutely necessary in the world. Nicolle, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm glad a baby didn't have to be born in this hour so we could catch up. Right. And I'm gonna call you later. No, I'm kidding. We'll catch up. Have a great day, and thank you so much for taking the time. This is Tailin Agoyo on Rise and Thrive on Usula Media. Join me next week, next Thursday, when Shelby Settles Harper will be our guest.